And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we are talking about the standouts from the first 6 days of training camp for the Washington Commanders. Next, we're going to be talking about the most recent roster move for the Commanders as they go ahead and they add to the offensive line. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jaden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and many others for multiple touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start with the camp standouts through the first 6 days. And so let's start with standout number one, and that is going to be Deebo Samuel. And so I think that Deebo Samuel has been a standout here for the Washington Commanders because he's come in and he's shown that he can really run every route in the route tree. I think that a lot of talk has been around Deebo Samuel and just what he's going to do as a running back in situations, and then also too what he can do over the middle of the field and breaking tackles and things like that. But what I think people are finding out here just so far in training camp is, one, he has speed. Number two, he has the ability to run every route in the route tree. And so that means that Deebo Samuel is going to be all over the field. He's going to be absolutely dangerous. And I cannot wait until they get Terry McLaurin out there with them. I think that these two are going to just cause havoc on opposing defenses. But so far, Deebo Samuel looking very good. I know Coach Dan Quinn talked about his energy and just what he's bringing to the football team. And so this is huge coming off a down year with the San Francisco 49ers, but I definitely think that he has been standout number one. And so standout number two, look, to nobody's surprise, I think that you have to give Jaden Daniels his credit as well. And so he's come into year two, and I think that he's showing, one, just the poise and composure. And so what we saw really as the season went on last year, but you're starting to see just the significance of that playing into this year. I think that he's already leveled up, and I think that this is something that we're going to see once you get into games and stuff like that. And so some of the stuff that I'm reading about him is just him being able to step up into the pocket, find receivers and things like that. Heck, even he started it off. The first 11-on-11 drill was a touchdown to Deebo Samuel. And so look, Jaden Daniels is locked in. I've heard several players say that this guy is one of the first in the building. And so you'd love to hear that Jaden Daniels is working his tail off, and he's just not looking back at what he did a season ago. And so I've said this before, look, this franchise is in a great situation with a franchise quarterback like Jaden Daniels. And so super excited to see what happens here. And so only been 6 days in. We've been hearing about the interceptions and things like that, but not worried about that because the defense, look, they get paid too, and we want them to win. And so it's good to see that the team is going back and forth between offense and defense. And really, I think that everybody's winning out there. And so next, I think the next really key, just stand out through the first 6 days, it continues to be Jacory Croskey-Merritt. And so I don't know if we should start calling him Bill because he did say that that is a nickname that he's been given, but I love Jacory Croskey-Merritt. And so I think that Jacory Croskey-Merritt has been out here. He's looked great. I talked a little bit about something that Dan Quinn said about him getting off to a good start. And so I saw the exact quote here on Commander's Wire, and it says that, look, when they're asking about Jacory Croskey-Merritt and just how he's looked out there, he said that, I think it's the balance of the cuts and that he can get his shoulders square and get downhill fast. So I'm very excited to see once we get into some opportunities, does he get tackled? Does he not? Does he run through some stuff? But he's off to a really good start. So, just that is what Dan Quinn was talking about with Jacory Croskey-Merritt going into a practice. And so from what I'm seeing as far as reading and just hearing it from other content creators, it sounds like that Jacory Croskey-Merritt is looking very good even with the pads on it. So I just can't wait to see what's going to happen when you get him into preseason because he's going to get a ton of reps. And I'll say this again. I've been on the Jacory Croskey-Merritt bandwagon here that I think that this guy can definitely be RB1. And I think that for him, if he can just go into the season as RB3 in a very, I think, deep running back room, I think that there's a chance that he could possibly finish as RB1 at the end of the season. Now, I know that that is lofty, and I think that, that's a long ways to go here, but I do think that, man, if he can continue to show the type of power that he's showing, the ability to find the holes and get through these things and burst like this, he's showing that he can really be a guy that can go inside, outside. Also, too, it looks like that he has some great hands as far as catching the football from some of the clips and things that I'm seeing. So he looks like he literally could be a complete running back here and an absolute steal for the Washington Commanders in round 7. But look, again, far away from games yet, but so far he's off to a great start. He's certainly standing out. And so next player that I think is standing out here is Mikey Sainristil. And I said this just a couple days ago. Mikey Sainristil, to me, I just wonder, I'm like, is this guy seriously in year 2 or is he in year 7? Because when you hear Mikey Sainristil talk, he sounds super confident. You can tell that he's definitely stepped into the leadership role. I was talking about how he was talking about pouring into Trey Amos and just having him hold him accountable and vice versa and things like that. So just love the conversation and insight that you get from Mikey Sainristil. But man, much like Jaden Daniels, you can tell in the secondary that this guy might turn into the captain back there, because I just love what he's talking about and just the footage that I'm seeing from Mikey Sainristil with the on his back interceptions and running for pick 6 and, talking it up to the offense and stuff like that. This guy's playing with a ton of confidence. And I think for Mikey Sainristil, we knew he could play inside, but the fact that he had to play outside last season and then the Commanders added to that by going out and getting Trey Amos, I'm expecting for also to Marshawn Lattimore to be really big this year coming back from the injury. I think he's going to be locked in. And then you also add guys like Jonathan Jones. Vigors has been playing well too in camp, so want to highlight him. And so this secondary is going to be very nasty. I think it's going to have an attitude, and I think that these guys are going to want to pick off the football. And so I think that Mikey Sainristil quietly turning into a leader here in the secondary. And so I think he's had a very good 6 days so far. Next guy that has had a very good 6 days so far has been Trey Amos. And so I said this before. I think that out of all the rookies, Trey Amos to me has the most, I think, just clear pathway or the best runway, I'd say, to be a starter from day one. And I think that Trey Amos is going out there and he's earning it, because he did say that, he was talking about how he wants to earn the respects of his teammates on and off the field. And when you listen to Trey Amos, I wonder if he's a rookie, because he sounds like, man, he's been in the league for 2-3 years. It sounds like this is a guy that is definitely all about the business here. And I just love that he is already showing that he can be a guy that can be sticky in coverage. I mean, it looks like that the ball skills and things like that we saw in college, it looks like that it's going to translate immediately here. Now, I know it is going to be a bit of, just kind of a learning curve in the National Football League, playing the corner or whatnot, and that's part of the game. But I think that this is the type of guy that, man, with his mentality, his physical skills, and traits that he brings to the team, I think that he's going to win a lot more than he's going to lose here in year 1. And I think that it's only going to get better. I see something similar to what we saw with Mikey Sainristil last season. And so let's see what happens. So far, I think he's had a great 6 days. And so next, want to talk about another rookie that I think is having a very good 6 days thus far, and that is Jaylin Lane. And so one of the things with Jaylin Lane that I talked about on the last episode, and this was through commanders.com, it looks like that he's taking first team return reps as the punt returner. And so that shows you that immediately he could be an impact player there. When you're looking at special teams and you're talking about flipping the field and just getting as much yards as possible, so the offense has as least yards to go down the field on the defense, I think that Jaylin Lane definitely checks that box. I think that that's one of the things that really was like the highlight of what he does coming out of Virginia Tech, because he's a guy that, man, once he gets the ball in the return game, this guy squares his shoulders and he is up the field. And so I love that about him. He just does not waste time. And I think that we're going to see that from year 1. But I love what we're seeing from him as a wide receiver. So I'm going back to a couple days ago where he makes an incredible catch, and it was a great throw as well. Now, I'm not sure that his back leg got in there, but man, a heck of a catch, not the tallest guy in the world. So for him to kind of climb the ladder a little bit and just kind of see over the defenders and make the catch here, Jaylin Lane showing you the potential. And he's like Deebo Samuel. I think he's a guy that can do stuff that's similar because he's almost like a shifty running back in the open field. But I think that with him, if he can show that he can really run every route in the route tree, I think that this is a guy that can definitely be even more impactful on offense than maybe some are really predicting. And so Jaylin Lane so far off to a good start here in the first 6 days. And so next, I think some year two players that are looking pretty good. And so Luke McCaffrey, one of the things that Dan Quinn said is that he is now starting to think like a wide receiver. And so I think that the game is slowing down for him and just understanding where he needs to be in routes and things like that. And so I think that he has the potential to really become impactful in the screen game and kind of work the middle of the field as well. He might be that guy that turns into almost like a Wes Welker type of player that you can depend on to just move the sticks and things like that. And so I'm hoping that is what we see with Luke McCaffrey. And I do think that there's the potential that he can even extend off of that. But so far, it sounds like that he's a guy that is an ultimate competitor out there, and it sounds like that he is definitely taking a step here in year two, along with Ben Sinnott. So Ben Sinnott, I talked about this. There was one practice where him and Jaden Daniels make an adjustment or something like that, and I believe he hits the seam on the defense there. And so that type of adjustment and that type of awareness, you only get that when you're comfortable with what you're doing and knowing where you need to be here. And so it seems like between those two players in year two, they are set to be impactful on the offense. And it just makes this offense, much like the defense, very versatile in the way that they can attack you in different ways. And also, too, you're thinking about this from the standpoint that if somebody does go down, you have players that can slide in there. And so both of those guys are standing out. Next, talking about the defense here. And so I'm going to talk about them as a whole, but I want to start here with Von Miller. And so from what I'm reading and hearing about Von Miller, it sounds like, man, he is showing that he is an elite pass rusher. Certainly he is going to be a Hall of Famer here. And it looks like that the Commanders are going to get exactly what they needed as far as a legit pass rusher. Now, the question is, defensively, have the Commanders got good enough to where they're going to be able to utilize Von Miller and these pass rushers and really the versatility of the defense? Because I think that that is probably one of the key things here is stopping the run. Because if you can't stop the run and teams are able to run it down your throat and things like that, I mean, you won't even need a pass rusher, because at the end of the day, these guys are always going to be staring at the first down marker. And so I think that that is key. Number one is that the defense, we need to see the upgrades up front, and we need to see too with Daron Payne, who they say has been locked in. Can he be a guy that takes another step forward with Johnny Newton this year? So far, from what I've read here, it looks like that the defensive line has been winning, in camp against the running game so far. But again, this is 6 days in, and I continue to say this, that we need to see what happens in week one. And heck, I think we even need to see what happens in weeks 1 through 5. I think that that's really where we can evaluate where this defense is and if they've got better against the run. Because trust me, if they've gotten better with Javon Kinlaw and all these guys that they have up front, this defense is going to be nasty. But make no mistake about it, Von Miller looking pretty good, showing as a pass rusher. And so defensively, I think that we're looking at a defense here now that Joe Witt Jr. is going to have a ton of versatility. And I've said this too, that the offense was fortunate to take off last season. This might be the year for the defense. And so we'll see what happens there. And so next, one last player that I want to shout out here that is doing pretty well here through the first 6 days of camp here, and that's going to be Chris Moore. And so Chris Moore, wide receiver, he's been a journeyman in the NFL. And so this is a guy that is fighting for that last, I think, maybe wide receiver spot. We'll see what happens between him and Jacory Brooks, undrafted free agent that I continue to talk about, rave about him. And so from what I see, it's been a little bit of an up and down for Jacory Brooks, but Chris Moore has shown up. And so that's another wide receiver that you might want to note. And then also, too, from a tight end standpoint, continue to hear about Tyree Jackson. So 6'7" tight end, seeing what he can do. And so it sounds like that this guy is showing his size out there. And man, he's making some plays and things like that. So he's definitely a name to watch here. But again, I'm so excited with this. Off to a good start. Can't wait to see what this defense is going to do, because again, we need to see what is going to happen up front. with Sheldon Day, Jaylin Holmes, Javon Kinlaw, Johnny Newton, these guys all up front, man. It's going to be huge for them. And then lastly, too, on the defense, I forgot about Jordan McGee. So Jordan McGee looking very good, looking sharp, looking comfortable in year two. Command of the defense, it looks like, and just his agility looks great. It's just a matter of can he stay healthy. And so before we jump out of here, I wanted to go ahead and jump into the most recent roster move here for the Commanders. And so if you've not got a chance to see this, it looks like that they have gone off and they've signed Lucas Niang here from the Kansas City Chiefs. And so he does have some experience here. He's 6'6", 315. And he was in the 2020 NFL draft. And so it looks like that he's been with the Kansas City Chiefs on their practice squad. He was released in November here. It's going to be interesting because, yes, he does, help out the offensive line, but he's coming in as a tackle. And so, you already have a lot of tackles, Laramie Tunsil, Josh Conley Jr., Trent Scott, Andrew Wiley, all these guys. And so he's coming into that group. The thing with him that is notable is that he played with Wiley. He also played with Nick Allegretti with the Chiefs here and was part of the 2 Super Bowl championship teams. And so this is a guy that, as far as starts are concerned, he really hasn't had like a ton of starts in the National Football League, but a guy that has that experience. And so it says that he's had 9 starts in 33 career games from what I'm seeing here. And so, I think with this move, you get a guy that he's been on the practice squad. He's got some championship experience. And I think that this is kind of part of what the Commanders are building by bringing in players that have been around, championship experiences. And you're hoping that all that kind of comes together to push this roster over the top, which I do think that is actually a little bit of a secret sauce to building a roster. I really do. And in any sport, when you bring in players that have been around champions and have practiced with them and whatnot, whether they've had like a major key role or they've not had a major key role, I do think that is something that kind of rubs off on your team. And so let's see if this happens with this offensive line, if this kind of rubs off on them and these guys go out there and continue to compete their tail off, because that is going to be a very important position on the football team. And we know really all positions are, but that there's going to be a lot of just exotic blitzes and schemes to try to stop Jayden Daniels in this offense. And so you want to be able to buy these guys as much time as possible to get down the field for Jayden Daniels to go ahead and hit the man. And then also, too, you got to be able to open up holes for these running backs because Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, Chris Rodriguez, McNichols, whoever that we bring into the season, they're going to need some space. And so you got to open it up for these guys. And so you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking about this most recent roster move. And also, too, let me know what you guys are thinking here about the first 6 days and your camp standouts. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And look, as we always say out there, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.